Here we go. Hi, and welcome to my first episode of Worldwide Community Live Streaming. And I'm joined today by Noah Clark. Noah is a 20 something, early 20 something, who is in his first year of Master of Counseling Psychology at Yorkville University. I'm just going to chat with him briefly about his experience in life in general with regard to his time since high school. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So, what is life like today for someone who is actually pursuing higher education, and how easy is it financially for you to attain some education?
Well, having both provincial and government student loans, federal student loans are helpful in that matter. But in general, it's very expensive to pursue higher education, and most often people need assistance from their parents or other people in their lives to help them just make it through, to have somewhere to stay and make sure they have all their basic needs. So it's becoming more difficult.
So, from a general approach to education, the funding is there, but what does it mean when you have to spend 4, 5, 6 years in education and come out with a lot of debt?
It often means you have a fair amount of money you have owing. Now they make it relatively simple to pay it back, and it's not too much of a strain. But nonetheless, it's a pretty large sum of money that you owe back to the government, and you're of course required to pay that. And it can weigh on people, and sometimes it can be a bit of a financial burden if they come out of the degree and they're not exactly where they want to be.
So, with regard to what you're studying, what type of job do you foresee yourself being able to get when you're finished?
Specifically, you'd be working as a counseling therapist in the government sector, particularly, for example, if it's in Nova Scotia, it'd be with Nova Scotia Health, the health authority, and working as a means of providing treatment to people with mental health or addiction concerns.
Now, I hear a lot through media and through just general conversation with people that are young today don't have the same work ethic that people had, let's say, back in the 60s, 70s. Do you think that's true in general, or do most people have jobs and work hard?
In my opinion, often there isn't too much of a difference by generation based on what somebody's willing to do. It often comes down to what it takes to achieve the same thing. And in my opinion, it has become more difficult to retain the same job someone might have had 30 years ago with the same degree. It now requires an additional degree, or to achieve the schooling. It's become more difficult to get acceptance, or more difficult to finish the degree itself and pursue a job. The amount of applicants and the overall amount of education in general across the board has gone up. Therefore, it's more difficult to achieve the same thing. I wouldn't say it's necessarily due to less work ethic, or in general less people putting the work in, but more of an increase in difficulty.
So when you were younger and you were thinking about your future in 5 or 10 years, let's say as you were graduating high school, do you feel that you've gotten where you want to be at this point, or do you feel you're behind, or do you feel that maybe, it's just wait and see how it's going to turn out?
In general, going into the field I'm going into, I certainly had thoughts about it when I was in high school, and I had a general idea that it would be, where I'd want to end up. There's still more work to be done, of course, but I wouldn't say I'm feeling behind or anything, even though I did have around a 2 year gap between my undergraduate and my master's. Plenty of my classmates are already, in their 30s or their 40s, and they have families and children, and they're already working other careers. So there's no direct time when you need to finish these sort of things, and I think I'm on the right path already to get started in my career and get a head start.
Now, outside of educational pursuits, what other type of things do you like to spend your time doing?
Same as you, I enjoy music, and I take every opportunity to play with you when you host events and performances. And I'm a piano player and singer, of course, and we do a lot of things together in that area.
Right. And what would be the benefit of being involved in music?
I think in general, it's a way to express yourself, relax, put your focus onto something that you can improve on. In general, self improvement, and the feeling of satisfaction that comes from achieving something that can be difficult. Right. It's not something everybody can get to a certain level at, but it is something everyone can at least try to do, and by varying levels achieve some level of competency.
Right. Now, with regard to other things like working, for instance, how do you balance your educational pursuit with the working that you do, the jobs?
Yeah, so there are many people that they're forced to work a full-time job. I'm lucky in my situation. I only have to work a part-time position. I am going to be working around 2 shifts a week at my telecommunications job, or retail sales. And but it's different for every student. The degrees are designed to make it so you can be flexible if you have to work a full time position. Everyone's in different stages and with different advantages that they can have. So having the ability to work and be able to balance that kind of life around it is beneficial.
So, with regard to actual living where you're living or living away from home, do you think it's probably like you've had both experiences? Which did you prefer?
Um, I think both sides have their benefits and their drawdowns. Being around family, you have people that you know all the time and people that are there for you if you need it. Living away, you have a little more freedom, and I was in the city at one point in Halifax, and I had the ability to go anywhere I needed to go to. But with that comes a higher financial toll, right? So you do have to take on more debt in the future. So you have to weigh how important it is to you to have that difference in environment, right? To me, I feel coming out the other side with owing less or having that, that structural support that I have is more beneficial than just having my own place.
Right. So, with regard to other pursuits, like you must have other interests other than the music and the education.
Yes, I do like to trade the financial markets. I still pursue that. It's something I like to do as a hobby, and I've spent lots of my time doing. But as of right now, it's something that's secondary to my education, but something I'm still going to pursue.
So now you had a unique experience in life because you were there at the beginning of the crypto markets and also a major change in how people perceive those particular markets. What do you think overall, with all the changes that have been coming in with governments regulating more, what do you think the difference is between that and regular currencies, fiat currencies like the Canadian dollar? Like, what's the benefit of it?
The whole point of having cryptocurrencies in the first place was something that was decentralized, something that wasn't tied to a particular country or economy, or even tied one for one to something like gold. But with the regulation that we've been experiencing, sometimes it's rightfully implemented. Other times it's a means to control something that the governments themselves feel allows too much freedom for the consumer, right? So there are some certainly negatives that come with the regulation. At the same time, there are drawdowns to having the freedom that the decentralization had, such as examples of people utilizing that to take part in various scams and to launder money and things like that. And it's been shown that that's something that tends to be done with cryptocurrency specifically because it's harder to track. So fundamentally, having the freedom of having more privacy and uh, not having people not have visuals of what you're doing, it comes with the risk that it can be used in a negative way.
But with everything, like even including the internet in general, I mean, there's bad and good in everything, and you have to take some of the bad with the good. Now, with regard to whether there's money or profit for a person who's investing in that type of marketplace, how has that been for most people in general? I mean, you hear of stories of people losing everything, and then you hear of stories of people getting ahead. How do
As
you
with the
how do you do it without having such a high risk?
as with anything, in anything you invest in, like this could be real estate or this could be the stock market, something that people view as more of a safe bet, invest long term in the stock market. There's still examples of companies that crash or market breakdowns, financial crises, right? So it comes down to you as an individual. What's your risk tolerance? How do you go about it? In some regards, there is still luck, right? Everyone can be wrong sometimes. The only thing you can play is play your odds, understand the potential risk of error, the potential negative you may see if something goes wrong, and the reward, and balance that out. And it's more of a mathematical game of risk and ratio, right?
So now, with all the knowledge that you've gained over the last several years with regard to trading, now you've gone further than cryptocurrency. You've been dabbling in currencies and that sort of thing. Do you foresee a future for you doing this part time as well as the educational jobs that might come as a result of your education?
Certainly. As of right now, I think the ability to help people in my future career It's going to be something that provides me a lot of satisfaction and something that makes me happy and provides purpose. But I can't help but want to have something as a secondary income, and I'll continue to work towards that. I feel with the mentorship that I have, behind me, the people that I know, and just my consistency, my persistence at trying to figure out the best I can, some level of consistency. I think it's only a matter of time, right?
So I'm hearing a lot of stories lately of young people in their 20s and 30s, and I'm hearing a high incidence of mental health issues as a result of feeling pessimism. Do you feel optimistic about the future for your economy and for the ability to buy a house and the ability to start a family and the ability to have a stable job?
I think in general, my viewpoint on life has always been to be optimistic, to view things as that we're very lucky, particularly us in Canada and in North America in general. We're very lucky the life that we have just by being born here. At the same time, it's okay to be aware that there seems to be a downward movement happening on various things, but I don't think that's so different than other periods of time, like in the future, in the past, where some event or downward spiral has led to negative outcomes. For example, previous world wars. So I think we're more creatures of the moment. So we assume just because there are negative things occurring now, they must be, of course, worse at other times, or that everything means something, right? The more you're exposed to these negative outcomes, the more you see things on social media, the more we assume it's all connected and it all means something. And in most ways, the way that we view these negative things, they've always been happening, and it doesn't mean you cannot have a successful or positive life. And it's more like just make sure you're aware of what you want to achieve.
So now you've mentioned social media, which has been in the spotlight a little bit lately. Do you think that it's a greater good or is it a harm? Or where does it fall in that perspective from good to bad?
As with anything, moderation is the most important thing. Anything used to an extreme can have an impact on the human brain in a negative way. So the way I view social media is that there are many studies coming out about the long-term usage, especially with those that happen to utilize it every day for more than a couple hours. And we can see there's direct negative influence on the human brain and the way that it functions, right? And there's some dysregulation going on within the brains, particularly in younger people, adolescents, particularly teenage girls. We see more outcomes of like depression and levels of anxiety, and that's directly tied to their usage to things like Instagram and Facebook and various things like that.
So, with regard to misinformation that is on the social media platforms like TikTok and X and all of that, do you think that there needs to be more regulation, or is it okay the way it is, or less?
I think the focus of the regulation should be on the age of the person and what they're able to access, right? So when you're an adult and your brain's fully formed, you're able to make your own decisions about what you access. As with anything, in the same way you're able to go to a casino or to drink, right? But when I'm 12 years old, or I had a child one day who's 12 or 13, and they have access to the same things, and there's very little regulation about what I'm able to access and view. It can be a very negative thing. So it should be more about what do we allow the average person to see based on their particular level of development.
Right. So now you know that generally I'm pro when it comes to technology. How do you feel about the movement, for instance, of electric vehicles compared to gas cars, and whether we're doing that in a right way or a wrong way, or how do you feel generally about how some people spread this information about certain technologies like AI? Elon Musk, for instance, is now the owner of what used to be Twitter, now X. Do you think that that is something that should be allowed or should be more regulated with regard to the influence that it has on somebody like Elon Musk, who got that influence through money?
Right. So first with the electric vehicles, I think the fact that the government has ways that it can lower the price for the average person purchasing an electric vehicle is a positive thing. I think sometimes the adoption can be a little slow because of the general thought that people have towards electric vehicles, and most often that's the wrong opinions that they may have and outdated. Nonetheless, we have to be aware of that and how that can slow down the sales and the overall adoption. I think the technology itself is very beneficial and it's a positive. It only takes a certain amount of years to outpace the general waste required to produce it, and then over that of a gas vehicle. And for many people, it can actually save them money in the long term and relatively quickly after purchase. As for things like social media, like Twitter and the use of AI, I don't think it's ever right for any single person to have such a monopoly over anything. Elon Musk, for example, owns many different companies. He's one of the richest people in the world. And then he purchased Twitter, which he then changed to X, and developed his own AI as well that's utilized throughout called Grok. And with that, you have a lot more control over what the average person sees, and you can control the narrative of many things. And I don't believe any single person, rather than a government or entity, should have that kind of control over a population. And there should be a little bit more regulation in terms of what we allow a singular person to achieve in this world, right? There's only so far that a free market should be able to go before it gets too far of a point and becomes a monopoly.
Now, obviously, you're living in a time when there is a lot of information out there, and there seems to be a lot of polarization between people that believe on the left and people that believe on the right. What is your general opinion with regard to how we can kind of stay as a normal society without being so polarized?
I think it's the design of the media that we watch to tailor what they produce to a particular side. We can see, particularly in American politics, you have specific mainstream media outlets that have direct funding from particular parties and those associated with them on both sides. And because of that, they have a big incentive, as well as the way their audience happens to lean, a big incentive to produce media with a narrative towards that side. So we see it with, for example, CNN and MSNBC, Fox News, they're on opposing sides. And I think with that, we retain and we view so much of that media that we tend to pick one side, and we build it kind of an emotional connection to that. And we want to make sure our side is the one that's on top. Our side is the one that we support. But we have to realize that no matter what side you may particularly view on, people are not that different in general. People are actually very similar. We want to make sure we want to view ourselves as unique and different, and that the other side must be entirely different and not they don't have the same values we hold. But oftentimes, the average human holds the same values and principles, and it just comes down to making sure we understand each other, and that whoever gets in as a particular leader in whatever party, it's more about what they intend to accomplish rather than who they just say they're for. Right? There's a lot more to that.
Well, and again, the bottom line is they basically want the same things. They just believe that we get there in a different way. So we don't need to demonize every individual for holding a belief. We just need to understand where it's coming from. So with regard to conflict in the world, right now we hear a lot of news coming in about the Israeli-Hamas conflict, and also Russia and Ukraine. And there's worry about North Korea and China. What is your general feeling on that? Do you feel that it's inevitable that there's going to be a widening increase in fighting between countries like this, or do you think it will calm down?
I think in general, tensions can continue to heat up, as we've seen in previous situations throughout history. The difference now is we have access to nuclear weapons in a way that we never did in other large conflicts before. In that we can only escalate so far before we're dealing with the own possibility of our extinction. And when you have that as an underlying theme behind everything by which you act, you can only go so far. So oftentimes I believe unless we have people controlling things that are very much not looking for the benefit of self-preservation, they're going to look for ways to tone that down, whether it be through making peace treaties or arrangements with each other. There's no way it escalates that far unless we have people in control of things that they don't want the rest of humanity to be around after the fact. And what's the benefit of having access to a certain part of land, or to say you're in the right if there's nothing left for you to control?
So that is actually a good lesson to learn when regard to all kinds of things, including things like the environment, which a lot of people are arguing on both sides of that. As a finish here, because we've got about a minute left before I'll finish this, is there anything else you want to say about where you are in life in general and what your outlook is?
I want to say that despite the many things that we see in life telling us that we're either not achieving as much as we should, or we're behind everyone else, make sure to understand that what you view online is someone's best moments and what they want you to see. And oftentimes, the way they present themselves is not entirely accurate to their entire person and their persona, right? So everyone has to achieve things in their own time and have their own goals and their own focus. And oftentimes, being happy and being content comes down to achieving those things that you want, and not just the things that society tells you should go for.
Right. And so it can be a state of mind. Choosing to be happy is something that is part of it. It's not all of it, but it can be part of it. Well,
Of course.
thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate it. And this was our first time doing a live interview through the podcast platform. And thanks very much, and good luck with everything that's coming to you. And I'm sure everything will work wonderfully.
Thank you for having me.
And join us next time on Worldwide Canadian, and we'll have some more interesting conversations. That's it for now. If you can press the like and subscribe button, and also click that bell icon, and you'll get notified when we upload new content. See you next time right here on Worldwide Canadian.